Hello, and welcome back to Module 1, Lesson 2, Your Ideal Client. So, in our lesson today, we're going to talk about who your ideal client is. We're going to do another brainstorming exercise to learn a bit more about your ideal client. And I'm going to give you some ideas of where to go if you get stuck in thinking about your ideal client. Now, something again you'll hear me say a lot is that you probably already know your first client. And my experience is that often people find this process kind of scary of thinking about who your ideal client is and thinking it's going to be really, really hard to find your first client. But in reality, it's often a lot more simple than that because often your very first clients are people who are already within your existing network. They might be somebody that you already have a really good relationship with. It might be somebody who you've already done work with in the past. So let's have a bit of a think about who our ideal client is. And then a little bit later on, we're going to do some work on where to find your ideal client. Okay, so you might like to get another big piece of paper out again, or you might like to use the worksheet that I've included with this session. But what we want to do here is we want to think about who your ideal client is. And I put some pictures in because for me, I think that's quite helpful to think about what they look like. They might be my ideal client is another mum like me who has little children or young children, not necessarily young children, but children that they want to be able to spend more time with. They want the flexibility to be able to work from home and be around when their kids are sick. They want to be able to go to the school trips and that kind of thing. So you want to try and create a flexible kind of a lifestyle. So quite a lot of the pictures that I related to were pictures of women with small children because that's kind of my age and stage in life is that's what I feel is the right fit for a client for me. That's not to say that necessarily other people won't use your business and you won't do people who work for people who aren't within that ideal client profile, but that's where your focus is probably going to be, at least in the initial stages. So you might like to have a bit of a think about what your ideal client looks like. You might want to think about where they live and where they hang out. Some of those things are going to help you to find your ideal client when we come to that. You might want to think, do they have kids? Because that might, depending on your interest, that might impact where you find your ideal client and the kind of needs that your ideal client has. You might think about what kind of income your ideal client has so that you can think about how you're going to tailor your business to their needs. It might be that you have to take that into consideration and when you come to thinking about your pricing or the kinds of services that you're going to offer. And what's really going to be important is thinking about their wants and needs because that's how you're going to help tailor your services to meet those wants and needs. And then I've put there, like I mentioned, you already know him or her or them. So you'll probably find that particularly if you're looking at doing work that's in your existing field. So, for me, that was law. For you, it might be photography or it might be accounting or whatever your area of expertise is. If you're thinking about doing work in the same area that you currently do at the moment, maybe in your day job or you have in your day job in the past, is that you may very well already know your ideal client. And knowing that person and knowing their wants and needs is going to be really helpful. And actually, one of the things you can do, and I do mention this later though, is to go and talk to those people. And that's something that I did in the process of coming up with this course, was to take some time to talk to other people who I knew, who I felt were in that category of being the ideal client, the kind of person who this course would be useful for. Some other things that you might like to think of, what are their problems? And that's going to be something that might be quite easy for you to figure out if you're going to be working in the same industry. What kind of things keep them up at night? You might know that because there might be things that have kept you up at night in the past. Often your ideal client is you at some point in your journey. What are their hopes and dreams? What kinds of, depending on the kind of offering, the kind of business that you might create, you might be wanting to talk about or work with your clients about meeting their goals. Maybe you're in the finance area, and you want to think about, how can you tailor your services to meet the goals that they have in terms of their finances, or perhaps it's, getting organized, or whatever it is. Think about what their hopes and dreams might be, because it's going to help you to focus your thinking on what services you can offer to help them to achieve their goals. And I also want you to think about how you can help them. So, again, coming back to that unique skill set that you have, the unique experiences that you have, some of these things, like I said, you might have experienced yourself. So, the process that you went through. And sometimes I think that this is where your secret sauce lies, where the gold is because often we have had our own experiences of working through a process. For me, the process of having gone back to that full-time job and just finding that that just wasn't ideal and needing to find a better way was what motivated me to start this course. I knew that I wasn't alone in going through this process of finding that the 9 to 5 job just doesn't work anymore for me, and then going through that sort of tortured process of trying and wasting lots of money trying to find, doing courses and trying to find a way. It took me a long time to realize what the better way was, and then when I did, that better way was quite simple. And you might have been through a similar process, so you might be able to help your ideal clients. There might be somebody who's going through the same processes that you've been through in the past. And then sometimes your ideal client's going to be a company or an organization. And so you'll have to have a bit of a think about, if that's the case, who within that organization is the person that you're going to talk to. Maybe you do social media marketing, or you're an ad specialist or something like that. And so that might be you might be wanting to focus on finding customers that are businesses to sell your skills to. And if that's the case, then you're probably going to be talking to the marketing manager within that business to try and sell your services. So think about who within a business it might be that you're going to be contacting. And you might also want to have a bit of a think about who is not your ideal client. So there might be people who you don't work for. For me, I wanted to focus on women who are going through the same sort of experiences that I've been through. And so it's not to say that this course and the knowledge that you learn through doing this course is not applicable to men, because of course there'll be men who want to do exactly the same as what we're doing here and freelancing their skills. But I felt like I was more suited towards talking to other mums, other women who were going through the same sorts of experiences that I was. And so to be able to focus this course and to focus my marketing, etc., it was helpful to me to decide that I wasn't going to necessarily be targeting this course at men. There may be men who take this course, but that wasn't my focus in doing this. And you might like to do the same thing. You might feel that in what you're doing, you might be, say you're a photographer, you might be wanting to focus on doing family photography. And you might think, well, it's normally the mum who's going out and booking the photography session. So then you're going to know who you're going to be talking to, where you're going to target your marketing and that kind of thing. So thinking about who your ideal client is and who it is that you want to be working for. There might be a class of people who are really hard. Maybe in your experience in your business, you've found that certain types of businesses or people are hard to work for, and it might be that you decide that you want to work with people who are sole traders rather than working with big companies or something along those lines. So think about who is not your ideal client, so that you can, when we come to pulling together all of your ideas, we can think about how to tailor your package to meet the right client profile. So here's a few pictures that I pulled out to try and think about my ideal client. You might like to do something like this. You might like to make a bit of a vision board of who your ideal client would be. So mine, again, I've got a couple of women there in the corporate environment, wanting to get out of that corporate environment, seeming tired and stressed, mums that are being kept up late at night trying to find a better way to do things, but actually really they just want to spend time with their kids. And so that's what I've done to pull together the slide. So again, you might like to do an exercise a bit like this and think about what your ideal client might look like. Okay, so let's take some time now for you to brainstorm who your ideal client is and what they might look like. All of those questions that I asked earlier, you can go back to those on the slides. I've included a printout that has all of those questions on it and some blank space for you to write. But again, this might be a moment where you want to get out those colored pens and a big sheet of paper and brainstorm all of the ideas about who your ideal client is. Take some time now. You might want to take 10 minutes, might want to take half an hour, whatever you need. Take that time, do the exercise now, and get all of that information out onto paper. Okay, so I said that I was going to give you some ideas for what to do if you're not too sure who your ideal client is. One thing that I've found really, really helpful is social media. And so you'll often find that there are business groups, either generic business groups, depending on what it is you want to do, or there might be specific business groups online that are relevant to your industry. And often there'll be people in those groups who are having challenges or who are asking for help. And that can give you some really good ideas for helping you to identify who your ideal client is. So I've personally found that really helpful. It also gave me the confidence to understand that what I'm working towards is needed. So it gives me a bit of motivation, and you might find the same for you. That you might think, "Oh, do people need this or not?" And then you go into one of these online business groups, and you see that there are other people saying, "I really need help with this," and then that'll give you the confidence to say, "Yes, what I want to do that's needed, and the people who are asking for the help are these kinds of people, and they do these kinds of things, and they run this kind of business." So if you're not sure, I find online is a really good place to go. Things like Facebook groups, sometimes on Instagram, depending on where you're looking. Networking groups are great. So, online networking groups are good. There are quite a few of those in the business sphere, but also in-person ones can be quite good as well. Often you can go along to networking groups that are either free or fairly inexpensive to attend and talk to other people in business. And often those are an opportunity for people to vent and talk about what challenges they're having in their businesses. So you can learn a lot through going along to those things, and you can meet people there who, again, they might be people who are just looking for someone just like you. So that's a helpful way to learn if you're getting stuck. And another thing that I like to put into is just to talk to colleagues and friends, particularly if you're looking at doing something in your industry. There might be people who you work with now, people who you've worked with in the past, and you can ask them about the kinds of challenges that they've had, the kinds of areas where they're looking for help. If you feel comfortable, you can even say to them that I'm looking at doing this kind of business, and what do you think would be helpful to other people in our industry? And you might find that you get some really great feedback through doing that. You might also find that they go, "Oh my gosh, this is just what I need. I really, really need someone like you to help me." And a lot of the time, I think what you'll find is that sometimes when people are working on their own, maybe it's just another mom working from home with a small business, is that what they need in terms of help they may not realize is actually available either. So you can make those kind of connections and say, "Oh, well, actually, I'm only looking for a part-time job. Do you want me to do a few hours for you?" And so just by asking people what's needed, and talking about your what you're thinking of doing, you can find that you can make connections that give you some of your early work as well. So it not only helps you to validate your ideas and get ideas, but it also might help you to actually find work. And again, if you're already doing some work, or you maybe doing like a contract type work that maybe it's coming to an end or something like that, you can ask existing clients what would be helpful, what kind of services that they might need. And sometimes it might be things that aren't, really on offer. And so, usually it's like that thing they say, there's no stupid questions. Sometimes you go to a seminar, and you've got a question, and you're thinking, is it silly to ask? But there's usually somebody else in the room who's thinking of the same thing. So kind of there might be people who are thinking, "Oh, this would be really, really helpful if this existed, but it doesn't exist, so I'm not going to worry about it." you can kind of create your business and tailor your services to some of those things that people really need. So just talking with people, I think, is really, really helpful. And I've put on there people with gripes. I mean, that kind of comes back to that same thing that you're seeing. If you're seeing it in business groups, you're seeing it in your office, you're seeing it online. If there's people griping about particular things, you might find that you're able to come up with some sort of a solution to help and solve those problems for those people. And then you can be up and running really quickly because you can say, oh, look, well, I can help you with that. And you've got some great ideas just by doing that, and you've figured out some of those ideal clients just by communicating with people. And I think what I'd say there too is sometimes it's kind of scary putting yourself out there on social media, but generally most people are pretty nice, and sometimes you don't even need to say anything. You can just look online and see what other people are saying, and they'll give you your ideas. So if you don't really want to post, maybe you're scared your boss might be on the same sort of sites as you, you can just have a look on there and see what other people are asking for, and not even sort of post anything publicly, just review the kinds of questions that people are asking. Or some groups do allow you to do anonymous posts, so you can message the admin person for the group and say, oh, look, this is my situation. Do you mind putting a post up there in an anonymous way, asking people if about their problems or what they need help with. All right, so we're back to the action station again. So again, really helpful if you do this exercise straight away. The sooner you do it, the sooner you can get your ideas flowing and come up with that business that is going to help you to generate that work from home income. So let's get that ideal client brainstorm completed now. Do a bit of research, spend a bit of time online, coming up with ideas for who your ideal client is and what they need to serve them. You might like to make that vision board, identifying your ideal client and her or their problems. And I would say just keep that handy. You might even like to put it on your wall where you can see it, so it kind of prompts you to think about it. And you might find it's a bit of a process. So you might, have some ideas now. You might talk to some people now. It might be that this develops over time again, but it's good to keep it sort of front and center of mind. So if you have that, if you're the kind of person who a vision board is helpful for, you might like to do that. And if you're really, really struggling, I think it's always a great idea, like I said, to go and find that ideal client, find the person online. You might even like to talk to them, chat with them online, or possibly if they're open to it, to have a conversation offline and use that person's situation to find inspiration. And you might already know that ideal client. It might be somebody you've worked for in the past. It might be somebody you work with at the moment. It might be a colleague or a friend or somebody that you otherwise know. And so think really hard about who within your existing network is the kind of person who you could think about as being your ideal client and possibly even talk to. Okay, so now that you've done the exercises, we're going to spend some time thinking about how to come up with a complete package that pulls together all of your skills, all of your knowledge, and the needs of your clients, and work to create a freelance offering that is going to enable you to launch a really amazing freelance business. So we'll be talking about that in Module 1, Lesson 3.